So we looked at some of the major early examples of Ottoman architecture last class. And we're moving today to works from Sinan, who's the single most famous, not just Ottoman architect, but Islamic architect probably. We know a little bit about his history. He was from Anatolia, from a Christian family, and was recruited in the Devshirme. Do you remember what the Devshirme was? It's the compulsory recruitment of Christian youths who were then drafted into the Yenicheri, the new army, or the Janissaries, brought up as Muslims, given a very good education, and often rose to positions of prominence in the government. So he started off as an engineer, building bridges for the military, for instance. And this engineering training is supposedly one of the features that led him to be able to build such large structures with very tall domes as well. So there are 6 buildings of his that we're going to look at today, and 3 major mosques, 3 smaller ones. The first one is the Shahzada Complex. Okay, Shahzada, it's from the Persian Shahzadeh, which is born of a king or a prince, in other words. So this is the mosque of the prince Mehmet or Muhammad, who was the son of Sultan Suleiman. So when he died, Suleiman built this complex for him, which has, in addition to the the main mosque area that we'll be looking at in detail, there's a tomb behind. There is a madrasa off to one side, which has a plan very similar to the ones we've seen before. And then the other parts are the usual combination of... Yeah, this is the mausoleum behind, yeah. Combination of soup kitchen, Minaret, and also a maktab for teaching young children Quran. So the mosque is what we want to look at first. Which direction in the plan are we looking at the building from here? Why don't you point it out maybe? From that corner?
Maybe.
Okay, let's see.
Where is the
Well, you're going to have to look for a fairly large mass of masonry that would support the minaret. So where there's the most black on the plan. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
from here? I guess.
Well, if you're looking from there,
This is the empty part. This is the building. Okay, this is the empty part. This is the.
well, you have a courtyard
Yes.
in front of the building itself.
Yes, that's right.
Well,
Well, is this behind it?
well, look at the position of the minaret. What does that tell you?
It's in the middle. Yeah.
It's in the middle, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So if you're from here.
So you're looking from there, exactly. Yeah, very good. So looking from here, we can see which wall of the building is this, Zainab? We're looking at one wall of the building. Magid has just told us that we're looking from this building. Which direction does this side face? Well, have a look at the plan. If we're looking at it from, come back, from this angle, then this wall equals this wall. Okay? So which direction does this face? Even if you don't have a compass, there's one feature in it that can tell you. What's this? which you don't have in the other three walls? What's that feature of the building going to be? A niche in a wall? Have you ever seen a niche in the middle of a wall in a mosque? A recess, a semicircular recess? What would it be? Yes. So, which direction does this face? It's the Qibla wall, yeah. It actually, so the Qibla in most of Anatolia is almost due south. So that's likely to be south. What is interesting in the buildings of Sinan in particular is the way in which he lets more light into the buildings. This is crucial. We talked about this a little bit in Edina with the extra rows of windows in the main dome chamber of the complex of Bayazid. But what Sinan does is to break up the wall in such a way that you have several registers of windows alternating with thicker parts of the wall so that it can actually support the building. So you have these very thin parts here, which indicate where there are windows, alternating with the much thicker parts where there are piers. And the interesting thing is to see how he does this on each of the sides of the building, on the Qibla wall, on the side opposite, and the two sides of the building. The two sides are symmetrical, they're identical, but certainly there's a big difference between the Qibla side and the side opposite. So, Nada, how would you describe the basic plan of the mosque? What are the main elements, say, inside this area? You can see it both on the plan and on the photograph too. There's a very large single dome at the top, yeah, that's right. So, Zainab, what do you have supporting the dome? How many semi-domes? Four, yes. In the last class, we had 2 in the Mosque of Bayazid. So we have 4 semi-domes. Okay, these semicircular dotted elements, these are the semi-domes, and this is where they are on the elevation. So what else do you have, Dina, supporting?
Supporting the dome and the columns and the base.
Well, there are not
Pillars?
piers, yes. These 4 main piers.
How do you know the difference between the two?
Pier and a column? Well, a column is usually round and made of one piece.
Yeah.
And a pier is made of masonry that, stacked on top of one another, like pieces of stone or brick.
Which means on the plan.
On the plan?
Yeah, on the plan itself.
Well, you can see that these are isolated. They're not connected with any other wall.
Also, if they're
They're,
connected with
they're,
the column?
they're freestanding. No, it's not that it's a column. A column is a round for a start. Yeah. Like these. Yeah, these are columns that support the arcade around the courtyard. Okay, so that should be a help. So, looking at the Qibla side, just notice the way in which you have 2 windows here set in recesses, so a very thin wall, alternating with these buttresses, which are what support the rest of the building, so that they can open up the Qibla wall for these windows. Or Magid, say, looking at this still, we have a very large dome there. There's a smaller dome just below it that you can see in more detail in this. What would that correspond to in the plan, this dome?
This one.
Which, when you say this one, what do you mean? Which one? Ah. Then what would this one be?
This semicircle is not, it's here.
Yes, that's another lower level semicircle that supports the semi-dome and turn. That's right.
Addition? Later addition?
No, they're contemporary. So everybody, we have 2 domes here. We have 3 in total. We have the very large one in the middle. We have a slightly bigger one here, and then a smaller one there. So we're trying to figure out what these relate to in the plan. Any suggestions?
The corner ones?
Yeah, these 2 at the corner.
I think it's the pillar.
You think it's the pillar?
It's the head of the pillar.
You're right. So this smaller one, which has a fluted top, in fact is, there, just to give you a closer up view of it. It's actually between the corner dome and the big dome. So it's between this one, and the only thing that fits is this pier. So yes, they have decorated the top of the pier with something that wasn't necessary for the building to stand up, but it made it look lighter perhaps. But that's the equivalent of that pier. And yeah, they've tried to make it look lighter, not just by the fluting, but also by some of the stone carving that you have at the top of the pier, also at the base of this dome. That's something that Sinan largely abandoned in some of his later buildings. We're also looking at, what do you call these again? Not just buttresses, but flying buttresses. Yes, they're not solid, but they're in the form of a half arch. So we're looking at it from the side. Nada. Just have a look carefully at the elevation here and at the plan of the building. Now tell me, where does this arch correspond to on the plan? Why don't you point it out for me?
It's here.
It's there, okay. Now, you'll notice again that he has alternating window areas which have very thin parts of the wall with buttresses. So windows, buttress, windows, buttress, buttress, windows, buttress, windows. Where are these large buttresses on the building? We can see them on the plan very clearly. What happened to them in the building? Anyone?
No, I think there's a longer buttress and a shorter buttress.
Okay, can you sort of maybe point out to indicate
one.
what you mean? Yes,
This part is this one,
that's right, yes.
and this part is this one deep inside.
Yes, yes. The inclusion of this lower arcade is such that it actually disguises the depth and the size of these buttresses. So it makes it appear much lighter on the side than it actually is.
It's a wall?
So it's not a wall. This is an open arcade. I mean, you can see these are the little pillars, these little dots that are between these. So you have 2 domes in here. So there is a space inside this.
Yes, like it's a room.
It's like an outer arcade, an arcade on the outside. But you don't realize just how deep and heavy these buttresses are because of the arcade that he has made in front of them. It's a very effective disguise of the building. Okay, let's move inside the building. Zainab, we have a photograph on the right-hand side and we have a plan on the left. Which direction are we looking at the building from on the plan? Maybe you can point it out to us. That's the... Which direction was this photograph taken from? You know, was it from here, or from here, or from here, or from here? How can you tell?
I felt it.
Okay, these two walls aren't the same. They're different, right? Okay, we're looking at the middle of a wall here. Could this be the Qibla side? Does it have a mihrab in the middle? You think so, Magid?
I can see.
You can't see, okay.
It looks like an entrance though, it's not metal.
Well, that...
Isn't it quite shallow?
Okay, the key is look at the buttresses alternating with the windows. That's how you can tell them apart.
Is it the metal?
It's not.
No, it's not. It's the entrance, right? On the other side.
How can you tell? We already looked at the mihrab from the outside at least,
Yeah.
but not from the inside. We didn't look at anything.
There's no space here.
There's no space.
The buttons are not.
They're not projecting on the inside.
Yes.
They're projecting on the outside in the Qibla's wall. Okay, so can that be the Qibla wall?
No.
No. No. They're projecting inside. Okay, does that help us identify any one of these three other sides that we have?
They're all projecting inside.
There's a difference. You can see that these are
Double.
deeper, quite a bit deeper than the ones on the side. So does that help you?
It's not on the entrance one.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a much deeper projection here than on here. So that has to be the entrance. Now, notice the difference. On the Qibla side, the projection is all on the outside. On this side, the projection of the buttresses is all on the inside. So, why the difference?
Compensate.
Well, you could have them both the same, and it would still be symmetrical.
But there wouldn't be a line for the people to pray.
Okay,
It would.
you want a line for the people to pray in front of the Qibla wall. So you want that as flat as possible. Why not have this flat too?
It's the end.
Well, people can still pray at the end.
Yes, it takes some time until this part fills up.
Well, let's assume it does, okay? Why don't you want another similar nice flat wall on the entrance side? Or
To support the courtyard.
well, I mean, this supports the dome, so it could also support it if it was a mirror image. Zainab, have a look at the screen. That's what the answer is.
Minaret?
Hmm?
Is it related to the minaret?
Not the minarets, because they have, large buttresses. But think about what is behind each of the four walls of the mosque.
Windows. Yeah.
What's on the other side
It's
of
a
the...
courtyard. No, yeah, it's
Okay, would that make a difference? This is a courtyard behind this wall. These, in fact, don't have anything behind them. What difference does the courtyard make?
there's no light coming in from it.
Well, I mean, there will be above a certain height, depends on the height of the arcades in the courtyard. And you kind of windows at the lower level also. Supposing you had this arrangement on this side, would that create any problems?
So it throws off the entrance.
No, I mean, look at the way the courtyard is arranged.
Yes, domes.
Okay, you have a series of domes around it.
Yes.
So, supposing you take this as a mirror image and put it here.
It wouldn't support the domes.
Well, I don't think the support of the domes would be a problem,
Yes.
but where would the piers go? What would happen to the piers if this was reversed?
He wanted it to be symmetrical on the sides.
Well, he wanted the courtyard to be symmetrical. If you have this arrangement on the other side, then you have piers that project on the outside of the mosque into the space of the courtyard. So it's important to get the courtyard to have a completely flat wall as well as the Qibla wall. And in fact, of course, the courtyard is also an overspill area for those who are praying. So again, to have the flat wall at this point is equally important.
So there's also a small part.
Yeah?
This size is exactly equal to these. And I think that's why it's bigger. And
Which size?
this empty space
Yeah?
is the same as this empty space.
Yes, that's right.
It's not bigger or smaller.
That's true, that's true. But even so, you could still have had this wall reversed on that side.
Yes.
And the other important point here is when you're going into the mosque from the courtyard through here, you're looking towards the Qibla. You're not looking behind you. So in fact, you're not really aware of these large buttresses on the inside of the mosque so much. It's the least conspicuous place that they could have been placed. So this is the way in which he's able to open up the inside of the building to as much light as possible. So Dina, which direction are we looking at here?
That's the Qibla wall.
That's the Qibla wall. Yes, this is easy to recognize. We have a Minbar beside the mihrab. But again, the most important thing here is to notice how Sinan has opened up as much of the Qibla wall as possible to light coming in from windows on many different tiers, making it as bright as possible. And the Qibla wall itself is also flat, apart, of course, from the Minbar. The Minbar is made of stone, by the way, and it's a very attractive one, beautifully stone carved. Okay, let's go to oops. Oh dear. Okay, well, we have a oh, it's not moving so fast.
That's only just the one.
It's supposed to be. So which direction are we looking at? Here. Let's see if that helps. You can see two.
Those are the sides.
Same size, same depth.
Yeah, they've. I think they've restored the interior since. It's not so apparent from here because of the angle, because we're looking straight back. but there is a different depth here. So, which side is this?
Entrance.
This is the entrance, yeah, this is the main entrance. So these buttresses on this side are really rather deeper than the ones on the other side of the building. And if we move around a little bit, we can see this fabulous stone-carved minbar. There are just a few stone-carved minbars in Cairo. Most of them have marble inlay, but this is very impressive with the grille work, the open work on the balustrade, and in this fabulously complicated geometric pattern within a circle in the middle of the triangle. And in addition, they have carved arabesques in these polylobed medallions. The painting is probably not original, but like most carved stonework, it would have been painted originally. So if we go around, we get a view of the mihrab, which is surprisingly plain actually. There's really not much decoration on it, apart from the muqarnas top, and then an inscription above it. The whole of it is framed by polylobed crenellation. But what you also need to get the impression of, let's go around, hope this doesn't make you too dizzy, is, oops, now where's the, let me get back to the middle. Okay. So you can see the vaulting system fairly well here with the central dome supported by 4 half domes. This is one of the half domes. Here's another part of one. And each of the half domes in turn has 2 smaller exedras, are what they're frequently referred to as, or yet smaller half domes supporting them. This is a very easy site to find if you want to do a search simply for Shahzada or Suleymania 3D panorama. You'll find this site very easily. Okay, so okay, the second monument on your list, second major complex of Sinan, is the Suleymania complex, built for Suleiman II, or Suleiman the Great as he is known. Built at the height of the empire. Lots of money flowing into the Ottoman coffers from foreign conquests, particularly in Europe. So lots of money available for building. And the site was a spectacular one on the edge of a hill overlooking the Golden Horn, which is one of the inlets from the Bosphorus. The inlet is on this side, and the ground slopes down towards this side. At the center is the crowning glory of the whole complex, again, the major mosque. And at first glance, it looks fairly similar to the previous one. Square covered area for the main mosque with a large central dome supported on 4 piers, with a slightly rectangular courtyard this time in front of it, a mausoleum for the Sultan behind it. There are many more ancillary buildings surrounding it now. We have several madrasas. We have medicine madrasa, a school of medicine. We have a caravanserai. We have an Minaret, a soup kitchen as well. There's another maktab for orphans. But these are all set aside a little bit with actually a street separating them even from the outer precinct of the mosque, So it's set in its own kind of ziyada. You remember the term ziyada from any other building? Which building do you know that has a ziyada? Ibn Tulun. So it's the same idea here, really, but on an even larger scale. So, which side of the mosque do you think we're looking at here?
The mausoleum side?
Yeah, here's certainly the mausoleum, which is on the left-hand side. So that has to be the Qibla wall. So here, as in the previous one, the buttresses are projecting on the outside of the building so that you don't see them on the inside, so that the Qibla wall is kept as flat as possible. And now you'll notice as well we have 4 minarets. There are 2 larger ones at the place where the corner of the courtyard meets the corner of the mosque. These have 3 balconies, and then slightly smaller ones at the corners of the courtyard. So we were looking at it from this side. The resolution on this plan isn't that more detailed, unfortunately, but the main supporting elements here are 2 semi-domes. Not 4 as in the previous one, but 2. There are pillars on the sides here. What plan is that like that we've seen? A large dome supported on axial semi-domes.
The one you just saw. The one you just saw.
The one we just saw had 4 semi-domes. This is only 2.
Last class.
Last class, yes. You weren't, yeah.
I was here.
Yes, so you,
I'm trying to recall the
hmm?
name. I'm trying to recall.
Yeah. Was the last building we looked at in the last class?
The one that's always in the snow, and they did a lot of windows in it, so they can.
Maybe you're thinking of the Edina Bayazid complex. This was a more complicated one. The Edina one just had a single dome chamber. The Bayazid complex in Istanbul, however, that had 2 semi-domes supporting it. And that in turn was based on which earlier plan? There was a model, potential model. Another very large building in Istanbul. Hagia Sophia, yeah, the Byzantine cathedral. So here is Sinan's attempt to compete with Hagia Sophia. I see well, actually, I think let's go back to the list of mosques that we have here. And so not too difficult to guess which wall this is we're looking at. This is the Qibla wall. So you have the mihrab here. You also have a type of decoration that wasn't in the earlier one. The earlier one was 1561. A little bit later now, they're using very extensive panels of Iznik tiles. We'll look at some other examples of pottery made with this kind of tile work. This is an underglaze painted tile work, but which has a much greater range of colors than any before. It includes lots of red, which is a very difficult color to obtain in this technique. So, same idea again of letting as much light into the building as possible. We have a special place reserved for prayers for the Sultan on the Qibla wall, which is elevated so that he doesn't have to go through the crowd. And then the sides of the building, instead of the semi-dome, they have these 2 enormous pillars supporting an arcade of different sizes, a large central arch, two smaller ones in the side.
So the pillar looks really odd.
What looks very odd? The pillar?
Yes.
Well, they have it has to be massive to support the dome above. Yeah, but what he's trying to do is to disguise its bulk a little bit by putting, for instance, an arched recess in it, and also by not making it just a plain rectangle or a square, by making it at different angles so that it doesn't look quite so large. So here again, we have exactly the same problem, if you like, or combination of elements as in the previous one. You don't want buttresses projecting into the courtyard, so on the entrance side you have them projecting on the inside of the mosque. But again, once you come through here, you're looking at the mihrab and you're not aware of this large difference.
Why are they separating
Why are they?
the back part and front part?
Oh, so that tourists don't get any closer. It's to keep tourists out of the prayer area. Okay, that's at ground level. Let's just have a look. This, by the way, these photographs are taken from another little elevated pavilion, which is like this one, but beside the main pier. So when we go up, okay, we have the same kind of tympanum on the side that you have in Hagia Sophia, 3 rows of windows, and you can see the amount of light that this lets into the interior. It's almost completely open with windows. And then, so it's only on the main axis that you have the semidome. Here it is above the mihrab. Oops. And here it is above the entrance. On the other 2 sides, you have the tympanum. So that's the view towards which side? The mihrab. And the view towards the side. What's this a view of on the right? A cathedral? Yeah, it's a building that was a cathedral, but in fact was later made into a mosque. You can see Abu Bakr in this big medallion. Are there any similarities between the two? Yeah, they both have a large dome with, well, this actually has 3 in Sulaymaniyah, this just has 2.
This one's different in the second level.
It's different in the lower level. There are more piers or columns separating this area from the sides, and it has an upper gallery. This is one of the buildings we've mentioned. It's a building that's on the same plan. This is Hagia Sophia. And the main difference between the two is at ground level. The idea in a mosque is to have as much open space as possible so that people can pray in rows together. But in Hagia Sophia, the central nave was reserved for the clergy, whereas the laity had to stay behind the pier separating it from the aisles, the columns. So there's a much more open ground plan in the Islamic examples than in the Christian ones. So this just again shows you the main combinations of the vaulting, where you have, say, the tympanum at the side supporting the tall central dome. The four piers support it. You have a semidome on the main axis, and then in turn a smaller semidome supporting one of the two main ones. And then lots of muqarnas smooth out the differences between the base and the vertical supports. So, third major example of Sinan's complexes is one that he built for Sultan Selim II, 1568 to 75, and this is not in Istanbul like all the others we're looking at today, but in Edirne. Okay, the same building where we looked at the complex of Bayazid II. This is rather simpler. It has a Dar al-Hadith and a madrasa here behind it. There is the dome chamber with the courtyard in front of it, and there is a covered market, a souk, off to one side. And in this case, the plan of the main building is rectangular and that of the courtyard in front of it. So this cutaway shows you the main elements. What's different about this and the previous mosques we've looked at?
Courtyard is not behind it, it's on its right.
Whoa, hold on. The courtyard is...
You can look somewhere. You can look on the other side.
Yes, yes.
You can look the same.
not sure what you mean.
Well,
If you look at it from the
Yes.
other side.
yes.
Fro-
Usually you would show us the courtyard above.
Well, this is the Qibla wall,
Yes, and then
and you have a courtyard in front of it. So I mean that's the same as the previous ones in terms of the design of the building. Doesn't matter which side I show you.
yes, I thought the Qibla side was down. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is the
Yes.
building. So, but any other differences that you notice? There's a dikka in the middle. That's true. That's interesting. In the middle of the space instead of beside one of the piers as it was before.
More shallow,
More
supporting the dome.
shallow domes. Well, let me just see where I actually have a more detailed plan that would make this obvious. Let's go back to the plan here. What are the main supports here of the dome?
8 pillars.
Eight pillars, exactly, yes. So that's really very different. And we have smaller semicircular supports between the pillars that are on the corners. What about minarets, for instance? Ah, the- Yeah, four. No, no. Four, yeah. It's going to be symmetrical. You have two here and two here. So, but did we have a building with four minarets before? Yeah, the previous one was.
These are all- yes.
Okay, but where are those minarets located?
On the other side, opposite.
On the four sides of what? Of the courtyard. And where are these minarets located?
On the mosque.
On the four sides of the mosque. And these are all the same size unlike the Sulaymaniyah ones, which had two large and two small. Okay. So that may help you understand the main supporting system again, which is through these 8 colossal piers or pillars. And it enabled them to support an even larger dome than that of the Sulaymaniyah. So let's have a look at photographs just to see how this looks. So you have the minarets creating almost the impression of a crown, which in turn is echoed by another crown-like element. What do these little domes correspond to? Yeah, these are the tops of the 8 piers, which in turn have flying buttresses. What's this black material? No, it's actually a covering of lead, so making it waterproof. I'm not actually sure just how much of that is original, but it may well be. And we're looking in this direction with the covered market on the side of the building. So that's the courtyard. The Qibla is to the right-hand side, and in front is a dome at the center of the souk. And of course, where you have a tall dome, you need to have buttresses supporting it. So in this case, they cascade downwards from each of the pillars with a flying buttress attached to more solid ones below that. But again, he's trying to disguise the thickness of these buttresses necessary to support the wall by these kind of balconies between them. Zainab, where are the buttresses here? Turn that off, please. Do you see any buttresses?
Yeah.
Where? Here, why don't you point them out? Exactly. So here's another example like the Shahzada, where they're present but they're disguised because of the arcades that have been built between them. And in this case, it's not just on one lower story, but it looks as if it's on 3 stories because the buttresses are so high and contain so much masonry. So this is obviously taken from the courtyard preceding the entrance. We have a fairly low ablutions fountain in the middle of the courtyard. Notice also the great variation in arch size on the side facing the Qibla. And this perhaps also helps to disguise the very different level that we have for the arcade on the other 3 sides of the courtyard. So this is a very tall building. You need tall arches on this side, but in order not to make it claustrophobic, he's had the arcade around the other 3 sides of the courtyard at a much lower level. No, exactly. No, so this is still a problem. And in a sense, it's insoluble. If you made this arcade at the same height, you'd have an awful lot of blank space behind, and you would have had a very small entrance, which wouldn't have been that impressive. But if you have this at the same height as this, it's claustrophobic, too oppressive. Oh yeah, I think the one we found for this was only 3D. So yeah, so when you get your 3D glasses, nada, you can look at this in the privacy of your own computer, okay? But it doesn't quite have the same effect when you're looking at it without them, I'm afraid. But it's an impressive way to get an idea of the interior space. However, at least this photograph does give you an idea of what is the most amazing feature of this building, which again is the extra amount of space that Sinan, sorry, not of space, of light that Sinan has been able to create by opening up even more of the space, especially above the lower walls, with this enormous amount of windows. So the feeling of lightness, even though the dome is one of the tallest, heaviest that was ever built, is really quite spectacular in this building. The painting, by the way, is much later. It's not original, so don't look at that as an example of 16th century Ottoman architectural decoration. Okay, so we looked at 3 large works of Sinan. There are 3 smaller works which are worth investigating too. Rustam Pasha was the Grand Vizier. He was married to one of the daughters of Sultan Suleiman Mihrimah. We'll look at her complex next. And this is one that was built in 1561. Built in the middle of a bazaar. And in fact, because of this, the space where you pray is raised 1 level up. On the lower level are shops that would have been part of the waqfiyah for the complex. This just has 1 minaret. It was built by a vizier, not by a member of the royal family. You needed to be royal to have more than one. And the plan is a fairly simple one. It's actually just 4 squinches supporting the dome, an extension to either side, and there is a covered courtyard in front of it. These staircases are how you get access to the building from the lower souk. And so that's the exit from one of the staircases, and they show you the covered portico in 2 bays that is in front of the entrance to the mosque. And what is perhaps the most spectacular feature of this building is the quality of the Iznik tiles that are used in it. So these are the underglaze painted tiles, which for the first time start using this red color. We'll see some of these when we look at panels at the museum. And this is unusual. This is a panel that is on one side of the entrance on the outside of the mosque. It's unusual in that it's not completely symmetrical. There's a much more naturalistic feeling to the growth of the flowers within the central polylobed arch form. Now, here's a view of the interior. This is actually the entrance. And we have a lot of rather ugly, dark, dirty painting on the corners, on the squinches, which are part probably of a 19th century restoration. And when I looked at this, I had the feeling that the amount of very fine decoration that you have on the lower parts of the wall made it too busy. You needed really a more solid, restful foundation for the more detailed work that you have further up. That's what I thought, at least, until about 10 years later, they restored the building and they took away all of that ugly 19th century Baroque style painting and ended up with this. So in fact, you have a much better contrast here between the detailed tile dado and the much plainer painting that you have on the upper parts of the walls. You can compare the two here. Although we're not actually sure that this is how the original looked, it is quite possible that in Sinan's time there also was very intricately detailed arabesques painted in this area. It may not have been the very plain white that we see. So
This one looks more Sinan-like.
more Sinan-like?
Yes, now on the right.
The one on the left does?
No,
The one on the right. Well, I agree. It's a much, aesthetically to me, it's much more pleasing. Well, especially the style of this is very foreign to the original aesthetic. But it shows you just what a difference restoration can make to a building. Or later alterations as well, these being the later alterations. I mean, you kind of beneficial and non-beneficial restoration. But the tile work still, if you look at it in detail, is what is the glory of this building, as in the mihrab, for instance. You have a number of repeated panels in the mihrab with a flowering vase as the main motif and arabesques above and below it. And you also have in these details a number of just wonderful designs. They have, when you are reading about the kind of designs that you have in Ottoman tile work, you'll see a number of terms referred. There are three main categories they talk about. One is Rumi, one is Ataya, and the other is Saz. Okay, Rumi, meaning in this case Anatolian, as in the Seljuks of Rum, is the traditional arabesque form. Saz is the term for the jagged-edged or sawtooth leaf that is one of the most common forms. And Hataya, this is another version of the same word from which we get Cathay in English, or, which refers to Chinese style or chinoiserie. Do you see any chinoiserie motifs anywhere in these two photographs?
Yeah,
Where? Which in particular?
the little ones. Little flowers.
Okay, well, in particular, you have Chinese cloud scrolls here, for instance. So that's a specifically Chinese motif. You have them here as well. Although they're combined with another favorite Ottoman motif here, which is, what kind of flower is this? No, it's not a Chinese lotus. It's a tulip, yeah. It's a European tulip, which was very popular. So the second one is the Mihrima Jami. A little bit later, built for the daughter of Sultan Suleiman. And from, yeah?
Who was the first person to produce the pencil-shaped minarets?
Ottomans.
Well, the Ottomans, yeah.
It's
It's
an end, and what's the reason for it?
There's no reason for it. They like the shape. But you also have that shape earlier than the Sinan ones. We had them certainly in the Utsharifeli mosque that we looked at in the last class, which is in the 15th century. Don't know for sure if we have it before then. But yes, it became the signature of Ottomans, and it's a very easy way in Cairo to distinguish an Ottoman period building from an earlier one. Although, actually, that's not quite true, because sometimes the Ottomans added a minaret to an earlier Mamluk building. But it's very recognizable, yeah. Another very simple plan with dome and extensions to either side. But the dome in this case is distinguished by having these large tympana on each side. And again, you can see by means of having large buttresses in some small areas, he's been able to open up the wall of the mosque with as many windows as possible. And that's particularly noticeable in this view from the side. Another superb example of a carved stone minbar in this, as we had in the Shahzada Mosque. And the last of the three was built for another Grand Vizier, Sukulu Mehmed Pasha, also married to a daughter of Suleiman Pasha. And in fact, it was really built by both the daughter and by Sukulu Mehmed Pasha. Or say she was the daughter of Selim II, not of Suleiman. And this is interesting because it's also built on the side of a very steep slope, and the main entrance, which is opposite the Qibla, is actually from a lower level. You have to go up steps and underneath a building which is actually the main lecture hall at the madrasa. This is a combination where you have the mosque here, and then you have cells around three sides of the courtyard with the lecture hall above this entrance that is part of the madrasa complex. So, looking at the plan, how many main supports do we have for the mosque? What sort of geometric shape does the base of the dome make here? The dome in the center of the mosque? 6. It's a hexagon. Okay, so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the 6 main supports. This is another one which has fabulous Iznik tile work, concentrated in just a few areas. The main Qibla wall to either side of the mihrab, rectangular panels above the windows, the pendentifs, and we're looking at the little gallery that is above the side. And this is one of the main piers in the side of the mosque, but looking upwards from this, you can see the hexagonal plan. This is the same pier above the side gallery, 2 semi-domes, the main dome, and you would have another 2 semi-domes on the other side. This would be the Qibla side, which has this fabulous tile panel that we looked at. So, some radical steps forward in Sinan's architecture in terms of engineering, the way in which he uses buttresses to concentrate the supports in some areas so that he can lighten the load on the walls and others and let as much windows and light into the interior as possible. That's the crucial aspect that you need to understand. And the other major step forward is in terms of architectural decoration with the Iznik tiles. And we'll be looking at more of those when we visit the museum.